are in the shade and we are painting away on our pre-toned gold canvas. You can see just coming into frame to the right there once in a while is my thumbnail sketchbook. And I did do, I think, 2 or 3 thumbnail sketches at this site. I never used to bother with thumbnail sketches, but I've found that since I started using them, more and more of my paintings are turning out to be as good or even better sometimes than I had hoped. You can see that I'm starting with my sky. Now, most of the things that I do follow some kind of process. I'm a very process-driven person, but when it comes to paint application, I find that I'm very intuitive. Now, you may wonder, what about that rule where in oil painting, we are supposed to start with the darks and then build up to the lights? Well, I would say that that can be very true if you are planning on doing multiple layers in one area. However, you can see that the way that I paint is very segmented, and I tend not to layer too much color over another color. When I do have an area where I need to do that, then I make sure to paint the dark color thinly underneath so that any lighter colored paint that I paint on top will not mix in with it very much and then just make it a muddy mid-tone. So you can see throughout my painting process, sometimes my paper towel will jump into the screen, and what I'm doing there is painting back something that got too dark or possibly too thick so that I can make an adjustment. I try to do this as little as possible because it does kind of mix that paint into my tone canvas, and then especially with this gold iridescent toned canvas, I really like to see that shine coming through, and it does dilute the color a bit by rubbing it with a paper towel. You can see behind the pine tree there, it's awfully dark, but I will probably be wiping that back. No, making it darker. I will probably eventually be wiping that back. You can see that I at least I've gotten it right in terms of making it cooler than my foreground, which is one of the tenets of making a space or distance going back. So in front of us, right in front of us, we have warmer, we have yellow, and we have a higher contrast of dark and light. And then as things recede into the background, they become more grayed down and they become cooler. The yellow in our green is the first thing to drop out, which is why there's not much yellow behind that lake, but there's quite a bit of yellow in the grass in the foreground. Yeah, I'm reinforcing the light color there at the horizon of my sky. And one reason for that is because apart from snow or sometimes like a highlight on a lake or a highlight on something, our sky is the light source, and therefore it should be the lightest value in our painting. It's a blessing and a curse to be able to look back and see what you are doing. In some ways, it's very gratifying, and in other ways, you can kind of cringe when you see the exact moment that you overpainted something. A good example is what I'm doing right now to the mountain in the background. Ideally, I would have left a lot more of that background showing through so that some of that gold sparkle would show through the mountain, which would have been so cool. But because I used a lighter color and used a little bit too much paint, I got a little carried away, got a little maybe too worried about getting the exact shadows correct. In the end, I wasn't able to wipe it back enough to get back to the glitter of the gold, which was disappointing, but there's still plenty of that shimmer coming through in other places. Having fun filling in that lake, and you can see that for now it looks a little bit cartoonish, and you'll see how that so quickly changes once I start to get the shadow on that lake. So much of painting is noticing what's happening out there. And one thing that I frequently noticed is that the reflection is a little bit darker than the actual thing that is being reflected. So the reflection in the water is a little bit too dark here, but in the end, I do make some adjustments, and pretty soon, there it goes, you're going to see that paper towel come into play. One of my favorite tools for painting is that trusty paper towel. Some people use a rag. I used to try to do the right thing and use rags, but in the end, I found that I just used them up so quickly that it really was using more water and effort and waste to clean them than to actually just get as much as I can out of each paper towel that I use. So you can see I didn't like it all the way that the top of that tree turned out, so just like that, wipe it out, it's gone, repaint it. But of course now I'm going to have to go over, paint back around it, and I will never get that same shine in the background that I had before. It's still nice and light back there where the color is popping through, but it's not going to have that glitter from that iridescent gold color. In reality, that iridescent gold color turned out to be just a little bit disappointing for me. I find that when the painting is sitting on the easel and I'm looking straight at it, I can't see it at all. When I take a picture of it, you can't see it at all. It just looks like a typical toned canvas. It's really only when you lay the painting flat, which you would never display it that way, that you really see the sparkle of the gold. So that being said, I have not framed and actually hung it on the wall yet, so maybe that would make a difference. I still have a few of these pieces with the glitter tone background laying around drying. So you can see that my rock there is quite pink. I have to confess that I really struggle with rocks. No pun intended, rocks are the hardest thing to paint. And I go over it and over and over it, and I finally give up. But in the end, I did take it home and I reworked it, and that's the only part of the painting that I reworked a little bit and adjusted the color. So I still feel like it's little enough of an adjustment to still call that a plein air painting. That's all for this time, but don't forget to subscribe to Adventure Painter so you don't miss any of our future time-lapse videos or other tutorials or even a tour of my backpack. See you later!